The Bluetti AC60 B80 combo is one of the few water-resistant power stations, and I think it's the only small water-resistant power station. Let's talk about it. This is the AC60, the main power situation. It's the expandable battery. This joint has 403 watt hours capacity in here. This one has like 806, I believe. I should know this stuff by now, right? LiFePO batteries, you have two AC outlets, one USB-C. It's not bi-directional. Dang it, would have been nice. You got a 12 volt outlet here, two normal USB-A's. I don't believe they are quick charge, but I think this one down here is quick charge on the B80. You have your charging ports all on this side of the device, which is the right, and then you have your battery expansion ports over on this side, two of those, and that's pretty much it. The battery expansion on the B80 is on the right side as well, on the left side as well, I'm sorry. There's a diffuse light on the back. Would have been cool if the B80 had a diffuse light on the back as well, but it doesn't. Now, about this nice diffuse light on the back, it does not turn on unless the unit is on. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I love power stations that you can turn the light on without turning the unit on because that's just ease of access. I use these lights on these power stations around the house. I'm a fan of them. I know some people aren't. I love flashlights too, so any source of light is really popping. Would have been nice if you could turn it on by itself. 3 buttons on this, that's it. It's just power, AC, and DC. Once you turn the DC on, everything is on. I don't know how well I trust wireless being on all the time. Hobotech brought up a point about not putting a computer on top of a wireless charger. That seems like sound advice to me, so don't do that. But phones and stuff like that, it should be fine because obviously you can wireless charge. Now your phone has to be able to take wireless charging. Not all phones can wireless charge. The more you know. This is one of the expandable batteries they sent to me. I don't have two, but you can expand it to up to 2 expandable batteries. Right now, this totals about 1200 watts. And if you throw in another B80, which is 800 watt hours, you get up to about 2000 watt hours, which is pretty sweet. This thing is chock full of features, pretty much all of the features that you want. You have fast charge without an AC power brick, 200 watts of solar, asterisk there. You have LFP, 3000 cycles of batteries until 80%. You have app control. There's expandability via the batteries. The IP65 waterproof situation. They say it's dustproof as well. Whatever IP65 is, look it up. Whatever it is, you have that. You have wireless charging, 600 watt inverter with the ability to power lift for heating elements up to 1200 watts. Not my favorite feature. I never use it, but it has it. They say that it can charge up in as fast as about an hour, but I imagine that is limited to this device. It's probably going to be a little longer. If you max it out at 600 watts from the wall, 1200 watts, you need a good 2 hours. All the testing that I've seen says that it does not, even if you take into account solar coming in and AC charging, because it can dual charge as well. You can't go past 600 watts. Now, one thing that I did notice, no barrel connectors on the device. And it's like, but I guess I get it. You know, nah, I don't get it because it's 8 millimeters over here and it has one of these little barrel connector plugs on it. But maybe because the barrel connectors wouldn't have been 8 millimeter, it would have been probably 5521 or 5525. You didn't want to go through the process of waterproofing those. I get it. It just would have been nice to have them, but I understand why they're not here. They're not the most ideal port. A lot of people don't use them, and you really want this to be nice and tight and to minimize the number of ports that you have on there within reason, right? So no barrel ports. It of course includes the AC charging cable. It also includes the MC4 to 8 millimeter cable. The EB3A did not have that in it, but they sent a bunch of them out to people if they asked for one. I'm glad it's in the box this time. And it also includes a 12 volt to 8 millimeter charging cable, which seems to be pretty good quality. A lot of those cables that I get from companies seem to suck, Bluetti included. I've had a couple like really shaky ones from them, but this one seems solid. I've been using it constantly and it hasn't failed yet, so that's a good sign, right? The display on the device is very similar, if not the same, to the AC, the EB3A. It's a nice, vivid, bright display. You can read it clearly. I don't pay close attention to it because it turns off after a while, so it's not something that I'm in tune with daily. One thing that I did notice is that on the screen itself, it gives you time remaining, but on the app, it does not. The app just tells you what's coming in and what's going out. It would have been nice to have the app show you how much time is remaining on your load as well. It doesn't. It is what it is. Also, as it relates to the display, What I noticed, I own quite a few Bluetti products. I have an EB120, an EB3A, I have an AC200P. Not so much with the AC200P, but I don't pay close attention to it. But my point is, the screen display of the AC output is typically off. Now, I don't know if it's off because of them let me just show you a clip of what I mean. So here we have the AC60 essentially powering my internet using about 40 watts. Now, this is what I was talking about in terms of the amount of power coming out of this is not accurate. I don't know if they're compensating for efficiency or what, but this is a 20 watt load, that's for sure. So my internet, I know for sure uses about 20 watts. This shows 34. You know, what are you gonna do? I don't know why it shows that it's so high, but that is not something that, like I said, I'm shocked at with Bluetti. It happens on a lot of their devices. Let's talk about solar charging for a little bit. I have this hooked into a 200 watt Bluetti V panel. It's probably not the best fit for it, but it's not terrible because it has the 8 amp input limit. It charges from solar, and you can also dual charge it from AC at the same time. And a really cool feature that they implemented on this one, which is dope, is the fact that it prioritizes solar. So if you have 100, 135, 140, I don't get really great solar power where I'm at. I also don't bother with trying to angle my panels perfectly, but I get about 125, 130, 135 if on a good day. The solar port on it is 8mm. I forgot to mention that. It's really hard not to talk about the AC60 by itself because I have it with the B80. So I'm going to talk about it briefly with regard to solar charging, as in both. With both of these, they both have the 200 watt MPPT charge controllers in them. So that is really cool. You have the opportunity to have solar coming into this one, and you can have solar coming into the B80, which is pretty fantastic when you think about it. But there's a particular benefit to having the ability to dual charge these that I'm gonna talk about a little later in the video. But let's talk about this IO a little bit. With the B80 and the AC60, you have two 12 volt joints, so that's pretty cool if you're into charging things from 12 volt. I personally hate these sockets. I use them all the time, but I wish we would figure out something different because yeah, they're stupid. The stuff gets loose. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. With the combination, you get two USB-C 100 watt ports. I wish at least one of them was bi-directional, but a man can dream. They are not. Now, those of you who've been around for a while may or may not have picked on the fact that I'm not like a testing and specs kind of guy. I'm more like a real world usage kind of dude. So one thing we have to talk about is the expandable battery. It has its pros and it has a couple like things you should be mindful of. The first thing, I talked about this earlier, is the cable comes out of this side. So you have to be mindful if you're gonna put this somewhere. The cable is going to protrude a lot. One of the guys in the Bluetti group, this is the cable right here, he talked about winding the cable in on itself to kind of create this sort of a loop, which is very smart to get it to be nice and tight and not as intrusive as it would be like this. I have tried something somewhat different. You can see how I have it tiered or pushed back so that the cable can come around and has space to go right into the expansion battery. I talked about this device having some implications that are super useful to me. I think it's super dope. Now, you know that it charges from solar on the 8mm port, which is cool. This one also charges from the 8mm port, which means you can dual charge them from solar panel and solar arrays. But one thing that I did notice on the accessories page, they show that you can buy a power brick to charge this joint. And I was like, interesting. That wasn't even my first revelation about this device. My first revelation was using 12 volt charging. Because essentially what this does, I can have solar coming in here, and then I could also take and have 12 volt power coming into the B80. And what that does for me is twofold. After solar is done for the night, I can keep it plugged into the device, and then I can power dump from another power station to help this maintain its charge and keep the party going. I could go 12 volt to 8mm here. I think that that's dope. I really didn't like another power station that I had where it only had one charging port for both solar and DC. This one essentially is the same thing until you add this. It only has one port for solar and DC. But once you have the combo, you get two solar, DC coming into this one, And that's a cool thing because I don't have to disconnect my cables. I can keep solar in. It supports dual charging. It supports dual charging for both of the joints. This particular battery cannot be charged via AC if you wanted to plug it in directly to an AC source. That would have been nice, but I'm not mad at that. I kind of understand why they didn't do that, but it would have been cool if it did. Now, another thing about the expandable battery situation, with it having the dual MPPT charge controllers, you can separate this. There's a downside, but you can. You can separate this, have this or this deployed wherever you want it, and then have the other one somewhere off charging. I think that that's super neat. For example, right here we have this 100 watt power Yargo panel, and this is the expandable battery hooked up into a solar panel. Now the downside is this: you can't disconnect the battery without turning the power station off. And I was just like, dang, that sucks. Here's the reason why. If you have a load that's running on here and you kind of want to flex your versatility of taking this somewhere else and charging it, you're going to have to turn that load off, disconnect it, and then turn the power station back on. That is not the biggest deal. It is not the biggest inconvenience, but I typically use this for running things like my internet. My internet would have to go down, and then I could disconnect this and deploy it elsewhere. But I'm just excited about the fact that you have expandability on such a small power station. The app is pretty cool because it allows you to connect to your devices via Bluetooth. This is a Bluetooth only connectivity thing. I didn't see any Wi-Fi options. So you could jump in the app and do an offline mode. It scans and sees what devices are available. Right now, it's not finding the device because it's not on. Duh, stupid. Then you would go into the device, click on it, and I don't want to be in the EB3A, so I'm gonna pause right here and get into the AC60. Now we have the AC60 up. You have a bunch of options in here as it relates to managing this device. It's not a whole lot of stuff, but it gets the job done. You have the ability to turn the device off, which is an interesting one. You have DC, AC, and then you have some things and settings that allow you to control eco mode, eco timeout. You can see that we have our power lifting button, charging mode, like I said, standard, turbo, and silent. Now, I'm not going to deviate. We're going to get back to that. You could turn the light off and on. Then you have advanced settings that allow you to go in and look at the AC frequency, but you also have the ability to manage the battery packs, which I think is pretty cool. When you go into battery packs, just know that the first pack is going to be the device itself, and then the second pack is going to be the actual battery pack. That was a little bit confusing to me, but you can go in and see state of charge. You can see it has some other stuff. I don't know. It doesn't matter. When I was first doing my charge, discharge, charge cycle, I was kind of looking very closely at the state of charge on the battery and the power station as it charged up and discharged. And they stay really close in terms of the percentages. I only seen it off of about 3% or so, 2%. So it wasn't really bad. I expect them to kind of stay in sync. But if you have any problems with that, then you could just fully charge and discharge it again. And they should kind of start to equalize. Hopefully we don't see any problems with this down the road like some other power stations, but it was pretty good when I was monitoring it. This device sits in my what I like to call zone 1. I have zones around my house where different solar arrays go into different power stations and essentially power that area. This is zone 1, which is my internet and my TV and a lamp. This thing is really quiet. I don't think I have ever heard the fan in any significant way unless I was charging it from the wall, which I only do once or twice during my charge discharge charge cycle. The fan is very quiet. Again, I've never heard it. Now, I don't put much of a load on this device. It typically maxes out at about 80, 90 watts because that includes the internet, my TV, and the lamp at times, but typically it's just the internet and the TV. And it's quiet, man. I'm super happy about that. I mean, just totally stoked. Now, in terms of who this device is for and who I may think it would appeal to, I very rarely talk about pricing in my videos because I don't think it's as relevant, and I want these videos to be as timeless as possible. They're mostly about the features, and you weigh whether or not price is a factor for you. But these joints are really on the more expensive side. What you really have to think about is whether the weatherproofing is a real benefit to you, and also the dual MPPT charge controller stuff, the quietness of the device. And those are the main two things that come to mind as it relates to why this thing would be more expensive than a lot of power stations. We typically sit at about $1 a watt, but this is 400 watt hours, and the price is coming in a lot higher than that. If leaving it out and having no risk of it being really damaged, if you are kind of absent-minded like I can be sometimes, I have left power stations out in the rain. I have. Now, some people, I feel like the ability to leave it out and not have to worry about it is really going to be important. The size, the expandability is really going to be important. The ability to dual charge is going to be important as well. I feel like some people may find that really convenient. If you add a third one, then you have 2,000 watt hours of power capacity. The 600 watt inverter is kind of like, I mean, if you have 1,200 watts, I can kind of understand that. It really should have been a bigger inverter. I would have liked to see at least 800 watts, but I get it. 600 watts is really cool. It's decent. When you start to kind of stack smaller devices on top, then you have that cushion to use that 600 watts effectively. To have and get up to 1,000 watts gives you a little more cushion. You could possibly run something like a small heater, what are those things called that warm the water? Kettle, maybe, I don't know. It would have been nice if it was there, but I understand why it's not. Or rather, I'm okay with the fact that it maxes out at 600 watts. I get it. So the build quality with the features, with the waterproof situation, I mean, this thing feels like a tank. The B80 does as well. The B80 is super versatile as it relates to what it can do just on its own. It has everything inside of it with the exception of the inverter and the ability to charge from the wall. But other than that, it's a super capable battery. I tip my hat to Bluetti for always doing that on their batteries, them being more versatile than some of the other batteries, expandable batteries that are out there on the market. The device is really intriguing. I want to know what you guys think about it. Could you see this fitting into your current system, van, moving, home, power backup for emergency, so on and so forth? Let me know down in the comments. Maybe they'll send me the AC180 so I could do a video on that. That would be cool. It is